Hello, welcome to another Ready Aim Raw video. Today's going to be an interesting one. First off, apologies if there's any background noise coming through. In the UK right now, it is warmer than the inside of Satan's nutsack. It is fucking awful. So all the windows are open, and I almost brought the fan through, but I'm going to wait until I'm done filming this. Secondly, today's video is an interesting one. Maybe not going to be as jokey, though I've already cracked a couple jokes. It's going to be just a little bit more serious than the usual unboxing and review type shenanigans that we normally cover on this channel. Because today we're going to be talking about creating queer and LGBTQ plus characters in TTRPGs, whether you were a player looking to create a character for yourself, or you're a games master looking to create a more diverse roster of characters for your world. We're gonna have a look at why you might create these sorts of characters, how to go about it, both in terms of what to do, what not to do, because it's quite easy, I think, for the most part. And also just some general advice, especially if you, as a player, as a GM, aren't queer yourself, and maybe you're doing this because you feel you should be more inclusive, just because you normally maybe not wouldn't be, but you just feel like having a more inclusive world would benefit both you and your players more. So yeah, if that sounds like something you want more of, if that sounds like it's interesting to you, buttons down there, subscribe and all that. And if it seems like people are enjoying this sort of content, I'll do more. I've got loads of ideas on character creation guides that go beyond just here's where you put your numbers. So yeah, like, subscribe, comment, things like that really help the channel out. So yeah, let's now I've done the shameless self-promotion bit of the YouTube thing. Let's get into it. So why have queer / LGBTQ plus characters in your game? So before we go into that, I'm just going to, for the rest of this video, refer to anyone in the LGBTQ plus community as queer. It is a word that I prefer, just because it's less of a mouthful, and it's just a word that I am used to in my situation, in the circles that I roam in. I understand that for many, it is still a slur, it is still offensive to some people. And if it is offensive to you, then that sucks. Maybe this isn't the video for you, because I prefer it myself, and because I'm probably going to be using it as a stand-in for just anyone who isn't, cis straight person, this video may not be for you. But I hope, if the word queer doesn't bother you, which if it does, again, like, that's you know no one's business. This whole channel is about acceptance and the community. And if you do not feel comfortable with certain words or certain expressions, then that's just you know there's I want to help people out in any way I can. But rather than have this video go on forever because I'm having to use every single phrase under the sun, it's just easier, you know. And a lot of what I'm going to say is already online. I have based a lot of this video on stuff that I've read over the last couple of days in prep for this video. So I'll put a couple links in the description about creating characters from both a fiction writing standpoint and a more direct TTRPG player's standpoint. So yeah, with that being said, let's get back into the whole why of it all. And for a big thing of it is, I think it's just the draw for queer folks and TTRPGs. It's I don't think that it's a coincidence, and it almost definitely isn't. There's definite attention being brought to the fact that a lot of queer folks also play TTRPGs. And I think that comes just simply down to the personal and emotional exploration of TTRPGs. It wasn't the thing that made me go, hang on a minute, I'm not like the rest of these people. But it was almost definitely one of the last nails in the coffin before I went, yeah, that might be me. I might have to look into these things. And I did. And ta-da! Shit. I now have identities that have pride flags that are just they're aesthetically fucked. I think maybe that's a video for another day, ranking the aesthetics of pride flags. But yeah, it's a big thing, I think, with TTRPGs and being able to explore yourself, and not just explore yourself, but explore yourself in a way that's I guess sort of detached from yourself. Because if you've been in this space any amount of time, after a while, that character isn't you. That characters will evolve into something that you don't recognize as yourself in some cases. And that's really cool, and that can be really eye-opening for some people. So having that chance to play against type, whether that's emotionally, in terms of your attitude, in terms of your approach to life, or if that's going, you know what, I'm going to create a character who is trans or bi or a lesbian or intersex or what have you. They could not be any of those things in real life, but they, through doing that little character experiment, that little, well, obviously literally roleplay experiment, could go, hang on a minute, this started off as a little bit of a laugh, but some of it's ringing true. And I think especially that can be the case if, as a GM, you present characters with those labels, and your players look at these NPCs and go, something about them is actually ringing a little bit true for me. Huh. And maybe you don't feel comfortable about talking to your GM about that sort of thing, but you can easily just go away, have a think, have a little Google, and you might realize something about yourself just through a character interaction or the way the GM described or introduced a character. And that I think that especially is why having these queer characters in your games is important. And it's also just fun. It's also just fun to have diversity of any type in your game. Obviously, I think there should be, um, you know, areas where maybe you tread lightly. Like, for example, as a white British assigned male at birth person, I'm not really going to touch heavily on any cultures um, of people of color. I'm going to do my research the best I can and see what I can do to integrate those sorts of characters into my game. But it's about making them believable and making them so they're not offensive. And if someone does approach you saying that, hey, I see what you're doing and I find it kind of offensive, don't don't get defensive and go, it's not offensive. I didn't mean it like that, because nine times out of 10, yeah, you'd hope you didn't mean it, but that doesn't mean it can't be offensive to someone, and that's why it's important to do your research. So, for example, with touching on the people of color aspect, I've got ideas for cultures in my Starfinder game where I've looked at several cultures from around the world, and gone, okay, this is, I'd really like to have a group of people or a group of characters inspired by this corner of the world. And you see it all the time throughout fantasy and science fiction. It's a repeating trope of weirdly Mesoamerican lizard people, um, Egyptian skeletons and mummies and stuff like that. And yeah, so it's something that probably will come across a bit iffy at first, but it's important then as a storyteller to flesh those cultures out beyond just the one note stereotypes of that culture, or that culture, I guess. Which brings us on over, to the whole research aspect of it. You know, if you have decided that, hey, I want to have these characters in my game, or I want to play a character who is XYZ sexuality or gender identity, or ABC nationality, or at least inspired by nationality or culture, say, that you do that research and see, at least for you and the people that you are going to be playing with, where the line is, where it goes from being, hey, I've taken inspiration from these areas, to where the line is where it becomes racist. For example, for me, again, going back to the just whole being white British thing, I I could have cultures, and in Starfinder I have cultures inspired by Japan and the Far East. I also have cultures inspired by Mesoamerica and like Afrofuturism stuff. But none of those cultures will I attempt an accent of, because that's just gonna come across really fucking racist, even if I do not intend it to. Because a lot of people will probably just go, yeah, you're just doing a funny voice. But to me, it is just not okay. It's not something I'd ever do. I'm not even hugely comfortable doing accents from within the UK. Like I'll maybe do a bit of a hard nut East London Cockney accent, or I'll do a bit of a Welsh or West Country accent, especially West Country accents, because that's where I'm from. That's what I know, even though I can't do those things for shit. But yeah, so a lot of it is about knowing what to you and the people around you is offensive and what's not. And in terms of representing those characters in a way that is fair and, um, you know, actually, I don't. Just in a way that it's about representing people that aren't you in a way that you'd want them to represent you. And that can be daunting if you aren't in that sort of position to be able to get that information. But it often it doesn't take a huge amount, especially nowadays, to do a bit of a quick Google. Say, you wanted to have a trans character in your RPG. Especially nowadays, there are so many people telling of that story, their own personal stories about their discovery that they were trans, about their discovery and their journey through their transition and so on. There are plenty of coming out stories for gay people, for bi people, for X, Y, and Z people that you can draw from and go, okay, so this is what they're actually like. Yeah, you can draw from those experiences, ask questions. Just especially if you've got these people within the tabletop gaming community, and as we've already touched on, there's loads of them. um, Maybe ask questions. Don't be afraid to reach out to people and go, hey, I've got this idea for a character, but I want to get them right. Is it alright if I ask you a couple questions about how to do that right? And depending on who they are, they might say no. Maybe they're not, maybe they're not ready to tell that story yet or ever. That's perfectly valid. The chances are you will find at least one or two people, whether it's just through a bit of Google foo or asking around through friends and people on the internet. You'll find someone who you can draw from as inspiration. And I know for a fact that if someone came to me saying, hey, I've got this idea for a character and I wanna pick your brains for a little bit because I realize that you identify with some of the character traits that I'm thinking of including. Is it all right if I run them by you to see if they're okay or not? If you find them offensive, then chances are someone else will, and I don't want to do that. And I personally would be more than okay with that. You know, it's not something that I talk about too much with people. But if someone came to me honestly saying, "Hey, I need help with character ideas," or or anything like that, I'd be honest and go, "Okay, cool. Let's see what you've got." And after a while, after honestly not a huge amount of research, because like I say, the internet's massive. The world is a massive, diverse place, and there are so many people wanting and willing to put their stories and their voices out there that doing diversity wrong isn't really an excuse anymore. So it then comes down to, you've got your character and you've got their traits down. Then what else? What else do you do right? What else do you do wrong? And most of that comes then down to how those characters are treated. For example, there's a famous trope within television and film and things like that. That, if memory serves, it's often along the line of burying the gay or burying the queer, where your gay characters or your queer characters are either themselves killed off for very, very little reason, or their love interest, or often both, killed off for very little reason, just to tug on the heartstrings a little bit. And that sucks. That's shit. Because if the only reason you killed them off was to go, yeah, we had diversity, their life was hard, then that's shit. Like, that's not to say you can't have queer characters in your campaign setting die, because if you're playing a sci-fi or fantasy setting, then chances are it's going to have the backdrop of some sort of conflict that will involve people, in shit situations. So put those characters in shit situations, but don't put them in those shit situations purely because they're queer. Put them in those situations because of other aspects of their life, because of other aspects of the world around them. So that's I think a real big one, because it then goes, okay, it forces you to think even more about their character beyond just the fact that they are a queer person. Look beyond that, because I don't know about you, but I could write all day about characters. I could. And at least for Starfinder, at the moment, I have about 5 or 6 queer characters. And that's just the beginning of the campaign. And for no more than 1 or 2 lines do I mention, hey, this is the fact that here they're queer, this is their gender identity, this is their sexuality. And then it just goes beyond, beyond that, and goes, this is where they grew up, this is what they like, this is what they dislike, this is what gets on their nerves, that sort of shit. So it doesn't, It's really important that you make your queer characters, or any characters that are meant to represent characters that are beyond what your general worldview is. Make it more than just those token aspects. And that can be hard. If you've got a massive world with loads of characters, it can be hard to make characters that aren't just, here's the token barbarian, here's the token gay guy, here's the, you know, but it can be done. Again, it's just about looking at what they've got going on, looking at what people in the real world have got going on. And if you look at history, if you want ideas for queer characters, I guarantee you history will have something that you can draw from. Guarantee you. A lot of the language used will be coded and tricksy, because obviously being queer has only very recently started to become acceptable. But that doesn't mean that queer people have only just started to exist. You know, you can go back to the Greek and Roman epics and tragedies. There are so many heroes and gods and demigods who, through a modern lens, through a modern context, and even from a contemporary context, were gay as fuck. Just look at so much of the myths that feature Achilles. He's gay as fuck. Look at, as well as Chinese myths and history. I can't remember which period it is, but there was a point where I think it was like an emperor or a lord was hanging out with his friend, and his friend fell asleep on his sleeve. And rather than waking his friend, he cut his sleeve off. And that became a sort of hidden signal around this sort of, I want to say, ancient Chinese aristocracy that said, to those in the know, I like lads. And I don't just like lads, I love lads. And that's awesome. Look at stuff like that, you know. There's so many stories like that throughout history where you can draw your inspiration for your characters and even your cultures. You know. So yeah, I think that's about it. That's about all I can think of. Again, I will drop a couple links that I found helpful in coming up with this topic, because it's something that I really wanted to talk about, and I really want to talk about other character creation bits and GM tips. So if there's something that you want to see more of that is maybe less colourful, drop it in the comments. If you've got character ideas that you're like, hang on a minute, I need a bit of help with creating X, Y, or Z type character, then let us know. I'll see what I can do about going, okay, let's look at these tropes in more detail, you know. So yeah, I really do hope you enjoyed this one. I don't know how long this video has been going, so hopefully it's bearable. Because by design, I mean, I normally don't edit these anyway, But this one especially, I have just let myself waffle and just talk, because I think that's how I enjoy this sort of content. I don't like cutting around things, because I think hopefully someone could find something interesting that I didn't. So yeah, I just talked to for however long that this video has been going. So yeah, thanks for watching. I should quickly mention, where are they? They're somewhere. Anyway, we are doing a giveaway for some pin badges via our Twitter account. So if you head over to our Twitter account, like the pinned tweet, follow us on Twitter as well, obviously, and drop a screenshot of you showing that you are subscribed to us on YouTube. We will be giving away those pin badges at the end of the Leviathan unboxing, which should be the 24th, though I have been reminded that that is also the recording date for the next session of Terror. So even if it does arrive on the 24th, it might be the 25th that the video goes out, or even the 26th. And that's if it arrives on the 24th. But yeah, thanks for watching. Be gay. Roll dice.